It's now the year 2022, and it's going to be a rough year for Halo Infinite. The honeymoon phase is wearing off, and the reality of the game is starting to set in. If you're not in the mood for critical videos, then I'd recommend checking out, because we're going to get pretty critical here. You can like a thing while also criticizing it. We all want Halo to be better, right? And that's the point of this video. When Halo Infinite isn't missing key staples, modes, and features, the few features that it does have are either glitchy, undercooked, or wrapped up in the alienating item shop. In this video, I want to list the things that I think the game needs to address this year if Halo Infinite wants to stay relevant. If you find yourself enjoying the video at any point, please consider liking it and sharing it around, and feel free to add to my list of grievances down below in the comments section. So, the first thing that the game needs to improve is the main menu. It's hard to describe, but Halo Infinite's main menu feels almost like it's a work in progress build. All the various titles, texts, fonts, and everything makes it feel like it's full of placeholders. It feels unpolished, sluggish, and unfinished in a way that's hard to explain. Upon booting up the game, I have to sit at the main menu for quite a bit of time before my challenges and customization systems become available to me. This is something that Halo 5 suffered from back in 2015, and the actual loading times got longer and longer as more DLC armor, skins, and cosmetics were added to the game. Just for the sake of Halo Infinite's health, please look into the way that cosmetics are cached in the game. I don't want this little loading interruption to get longer and longer as each new patch is introduced. Please don't let this become a problem just like it was in Halo 5. When the customization does finally become available, the act of actually navigating this menu feels clunkier than Halo Reach and even 343's own Halo 4. I find that what I'm looking for always requires digging into submenu after submenu and then horizontally scrolling through a list of placeholder-esque tiles until I can finally find what I want. More time is spent on customizing my Halo Infinite Spartan than past titles, sure, but the reason for that is because most of the time is just spent sifting through this unfinished menu layout. The game itself also only launched with 4 playlists, and thankfully, due to community backlash, more playlists were added. But it's very clear that this menu itself just wasn't designed for a lot of playlist variety. I think a lot of this honestly needs to be redesigned, and my advice to the UI and the UX designers and engineers would be to look towards Halo Reach and Halo 4 for inspiration on a menu redesign. If a video game is a hotel, the main menu is a hotel lobby, and I found the lobby for this particular hotel to be kind of messy and confusing, and I prefer the old one. Now, I'm not saying that the main menus of Halo Reach and 4 are flawless. What I am saying is that they were easy to navigate, intuitive, and very cleanly designed. Much cleaner and easier to navigate than whatever Halo Infinite thinks it's trying to do. My advice for the UI and UX team would be to default to those layouts that did stand the test of time and build upon those with modern game design sensibilities. Halo Infinite could have the best menu to navigate in Halo's history, but it's gonna require getting away from this failed attempt to reinvent the wheel. Halo Infinite's main menu is a mess, and it would be a lot easier to just default back to what worked before and build from there. The layouts of older main menus also feel honestly a bit more future-proof for additional content than what Halo Infinite currently has, so instead of constantly trying to patch and fix and add and condense things with this messy new layout, make a complete main menu overhaul that is more in the spirit of those better, classic, cleaner titles. My next point of improvement is the quality assurance and consistency of updates from 343. Halo Infinite itself launched in November, and since that launch, the stability and quality of the game was left mostly unaddressed. Bugs that existed during the pre-release periods made it to launch, and here in January of 2022, they still exist. These bugs range from choppy view model animations, memory leaks on PC, missing textures and materials on things that have real money value assigned to them, player desync and collision issues, unstable server quality, lag, and so on. Custom games have been in a crashing and unpolished state since November, and the theater mode is such a chore to simply get working. Which sucks because I love theater mode on MCC. It's exhausting going to the Halo support site outside of the game to report things that I'm experiencing in the game. It needs to be smoother for both the developers and the player. Put a tool in the game for reporting bugs. Now, speaking of bugs, the PC version of Halo Infinite is not very good. It's got a solid foundation for a good PC version, but the actual quality and stability of it is not great. I'm not sure if it's the Halo game engine itself that isn't well optimized, or if it's the PC version that's not optimized, but it feels like the game is much more demanding than it really should be. There are other games on the market that are doing more impressive things graphically and in terms of scale, so I can't really explain why Halo Infinite seems to be so demanding. On top of the poor performance, many things in the game have their frame rate halved, which leads to this weird mismatch with facial animations, store items, and first-person animations updating at 30 FPS, which gives off a choppy and unstable visual presentation. Why does the store want me to spend money on an ugly particle effect that doesn't even run at the same frame rate the game is running at? No, this needs to be better. It doesn't help that those memory leaks I mentioned require a full restart every hour or so, or you risk the degradation of your performance and eventually the crash of the game. Aiming feels slippery, performance feels rough, and I've noticed certain graphical effects seem just flat out missing on PC, such as burn decals when vehicles explode. And 343, please let us turn off the temporal anti-aliasing. I'm not sure if it also has some reconstruction techniques built into it under the hood to stabilize the image, but PC gamers are quite familiar with how smeary it can make games look in motion. If you're a console player and you don't know what temporal anti-aliasing is, don't worry, but for my PC brethren, you know what I mean, right? The PC build also lacks red reticles, which makes judging distance and range harder than the console experience, and the explanation 343 gave for why it was removed is one that I just don't find that great, considering that the competition allows for red reticles. I'm not sure if this was done more so as a handicap for 343 since they seem to struggle with keeping up with cheaters, but I guess this is probably a good place to talk about cheaters. So in ranked play, the hacking situation is getting quite rough. Many say that the game has no anti-cheat, which this is annoying in its own right because it's just hyperbole that diverts from the conversation that needs to take place. Halo Infinite does have anti-cheat. The issue is that this anti-cheat measure is simply not good enough. People are getting through it regardless, and there's a concern that 343 won't be able to keep up with the cheaters due to their slow and sluggish response time when it came to hackers on the MCC. This is 343's first time dealing with a free-to-play title, and what I would suggest to 343 is to look towards the competition and how they handle cheaters. The game needs in-game tools for reporting hackers, and honestly, I'd take a look at CSGO's community-driven Overwatch system. It could help give 343 a couple of extra eyes when it comes to spotting hackers, and it would give 343 a good excuse to get the theater mode up and running. So there's this excellent GDC talk about Counter-Strike Go's approach to anti-cheat that I'll link down below. It's very fascinating, and it's worth a watch if anyone at 343 finds themselves watching this video. I really encourage watching it. My next area of feedback is the lack of content. So the reason that folks tend to bring up Halo Reach when discussing Halo 5 or now Halo Infinite's lack of content isn't actually due to nostalgia. It's more about the objective fact that Halo Reach on paper had the best content lineup for any modern Halo game to start from. Still to this day, Halo 4, Halo 5, and now Halo Infinite failed to be at feature parity with Halo Reach. Halo 5 came close at the end of its live service, but even then, it couldn't match all of Halo Reach's features. And what's stranger is that each new Halo game from 343 actually seems to launch with less content than the previous game, which makes many people in the Halo community curious as to what is wrong behind the scenes. Why does 343 seem to genuinely struggle when it comes to feature-complete games? Many in the community find Halo Reach's content offering to be the standard that a Halo game should have, and then you build out from there. And Halo Infinite needs to look at that. I'm going to put together a list of things that I find to be missing from Infinite that Reach had. Now, I know that not everything in this list is worth pursuing, such as campaign matchmaking, but as a baseline, I believe that this list gives the folks at 343 a goal to aim for. I want to see Infinite try to match this feature list over the next year or year and a half. I want to be able to go across this list and check off boxes as each new feature is added, and I want to see almost every single feature in the game at some point. This list of features will get Infinite into a place where I believe the community will be happy. Reach for that high bar, 343. Halo 5 went from being the shallowest Halo title in the series on launch to one of the most content-rich, and it did that by simply trying to match Reach's content lineup. So my next area of improvement would be the vehicle combat. Halo Infinite had this ambitious idea for vehicles, the idea of damage affecting the handling of vehicles and the doomsday mechanic when its health reaches 0. Now that we've had time with it, I feel like the vehicle gameplay in Halo Infinite might be my personal least favorite in the whole series. It feels like my vehicles are always losing parts and having their stats messed with, and I can't hold on to them for too long until they explode. I think revisiting a shared health system like ODST in Halo 3 would be cool, having a soft connection between the vehicle's health and the operator's health, so that vehicles aren't constantly on the verge of blowing up. And as for the handling, the vehicles themselves feel floaty and weightless, which definitely worked well in Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2 and 3, but in Halo Infinite, level geometry is much more complex than it used to be, you know? There's a lot more sticky-uppy bits in the ground and polygons that are obscured by the modern density of foliage and tall grass, and so that old-school bouncy physics system for vehicles could use some tightening up. I think that the equipment system could also benefit from an injection of more neutral equipments into the fold, such as deployable gravity lifts, bubble shields, etc. Stuff that you can throw on the ground, and then it becomes this neutral variable in the combat that can honestly lean either way if you're smart. I think more utility-focused equipment would also help solve the vehicle problem I just mentioned. Imagine a welding torch equipment that lets you repair vehicles. This could benefit not just the multiplayer, but the campaign too, since that vehicle problem I mentioned affects the campaign badly. The more superpower-driven equipment, such as the grappling hook, the repulsor and stuff, are fine and all, but it can't all be just about player gratification. If the game wants to be a little bit more complex, have a little bit more teamwork, some of the equipments should be more neutral in their design. And this doesn't mean removing anything or patching anything, it just means more equipment being added to the game, which ultimately means more tools for people to play with. My next area of improvement would absolutely be the customization. 343 crafted this incredibly modular system. The menus for it do need work, but we talked about that already. What's here has a lot of potential, but it's an example of a business model absolutely crippling the hard work that the engineers put into designing this thing. Removing the player's ability to select and customize the colors of their armor was a mistake, and what they replaced that system with feels like it's not here to give me options, it's there to give the business and design team options for monetization. I should not have to buy the color blue for individual weapons and individual armor sets. Now, as for the armor cores themselves, I actually understand a desire for clarity in the art of the armors. You want that Reach armor core to undeniably look like it came from Halo Reach. But when looking at the Battle Pass and then looking at the weekly rotating item shop that's asking $20 for things that were withheld from the Battle Pass, I'm honestly starting to wonder if this armor core restriction was actually born from a desire to Trojan horse monetizable COD-style specialists into Halo. Is that really why it was done? I have absolutely no clue, but the fact that the bots in the game can cross-core customize and modders can do it honestly leaves the community only with the ability to make theories on why it is this way. Unique and inflexible silhouettes that just so happen to be super monetizable in other games. And Halo in general has been trying to lock down our ability to customize the silhouettes of our Spartans. I mean, look at how much of a downgrade Halo 5 was from Halo 4. The developers themselves said that they had to remove team colors because Halo Infinite is a game all about player expression. But when I look at my color customization options, all I see is the removal of player expression and the introduction of monetization. And when I look at my actual armors, all I see are restrictions, limitations, but hey, there's a lot of cool stuff in the item shop for $8 to $20. Perhaps giving armor cores themselves a progression system of their own, and once you get to max rank, you obtain the ability to send armor pieces to other max rank armor cores would fix this issue. That way you could preserve the spirit of strong silhouettes and make the mismatched armor cores stand out more due to it being a player accomplishment, you know? I'd also really like to see the ability to create and personalize my own emblems back. This was taken away from players in Halo 5 and it continues to be withheld in Halo Infinite, and many people believe it's due to the fact that, well, it's a lot easier to monetize developer-made emblems than it is to allow players, well, freedom of expression. My pitch to the publisher, who I assume is responsible for this weird restriction, is let's all have our cake and eat it too. Give players the ability to customize their emblems again, and 343 sell us even more emblems post-launch that we can buy and throw into our weird melting pot of ugly player emblems. There you go. We all win. My next area of improvement for the game would be the aiming system. Halo Infinite's aiming just doesn't feel right. When you jump over to modern shooter titles like any Call of Duty game, or even past Halo titles like Halo 4, the act of just moving the camera around feels nice and responsive. The curve of the camera, the trajectory, and the fluidity makes it feel very responsive and easy to grasp. Halo Infinite just feels very inconsistent and sluggish for some reason. It feels almost like Halo Infinite has inherited the same aiming issues from Halo 5's version of the Halo engine. In a competitive shooter, aiming is key, and I am constantly fiddling with the aiming settings because they never feel quite right in Halo Infinite. My advice for 343 would be to look towards specifically emulating the feeling of Halo 4's controller aiming values, because still to this day, I think Halo 4's aiming system felt the nicest, with Halo Reach being not too far behind. It does feel like something in the aiming system rattled loose under the hood in the Halo engine during that technological leap from Halo 4 to 5, and it's affecting the consistency of the aiming, and it's been doing this now since 2015. If anyone in the comments has any information or studies on what's wrong with Halo's current aiming system, I'd love to see them. Any bit of information helps, and it helps me inform my videos better. The next area of improvement I'd like to see is in regards to how Sandbox Item spawns are handled. Their placement on maps is usually always around spawn locations, but when you begin branching out into the maps, it gets a bit harder to find them without the assistance of that X-ray vision scan. What some people think are bad maps in Halo Infinite might honestly just need better weapon placement and equipment spawns. Maps like Behemoth could honestly use more weapons or drop walls out in no man's land. The issue is that those weapon lockers must be bolted to walls. By design, Halo Infinite can't have a battle rifle on the ground in the middle of a field like in past Halo titles. And for the sake of not looking comical, it can't place too many weapons next to each other like in past titles, otherwise you have a wall full of these weapon racks. The weapon racks aren't a bad idea. Their implementation just currently carries placement restrictions that previous games with their more natural weapon placements didn't have. 343 can approach this two ways in my opinion. One is honestly reconsider how rigid the weapon rack system is. Loosen things up a bit. Maybe place important wall weapons in those racks and then place more casual weapons on the ground, or maybe create new assets that allow for more creative weapon rack placement. Maybe those weapon pods from Halo 3's Valhalla could contain casual weapons when out in no man's land. As for big team battle, the whole randomized vehicle spawn thing leads to the maps feeling very samey and repetitive to me. Imagine how much more unique the maps would feel if they all had their own spawns for things. You could have that banished map have banished vehicles on it, each team sporting a wraith from spawn, fighting over banshees that are placed in neutral places in the center of the map. It would give big team battles vehicles also a better sense of tactical importance, because there can be coordination and strategy with the heavy vehicles. If, though, players do like that randomized, homogenized spawn system, maybe in the future, once the UI is cleaned up a bit, have a special classic big team battle mode with set spawns for those who enjoy a more tactical pacing for big team battle. And finally, before 343 does anything, consider bringing on a support studio. This is kind of a huge ask and probably a choice that needs to go above 343, up the chain of command to Xbox and Microsoft. But most live service games need external support studios. Warzone, Apex Legends, and so on don't have a single developer maintaining their live service pipeline. It's a collaboration between different support studios. 343 just barely squeaked Halo Infinite out the door, and the lack of polish, unfinished or missing features, and lack of, well, anything a live service game needs kind of shows. I think Halo Infinite is already stretching 343 too thin, and it'll continue to put stress on them and lower the quality of their output unless they get some breathing room via support studios. I think this would also help 343's content output feel more meaningful and plentiful. 343 just doesn't seem capable of matching the output of not just the earlier Halo titles, but other FPS games in the industry, as the production value of their game increases and the resources and manpower gets spread thin internally. I'm sure that Halo Infinite will have a wealth of content in a few years' time, but most gamers don't want to wait a few years' time for the game to simply meet Halo Reach's content lineup. Get external help so that the production of maps, modes, and features, and definitely the polish can be increased. Consider requesting a new Halo support studio to assist with maintaining the live game. So that's all the stuff that I'd like to see Halo Infinite improve over the course of the year. If I seem aggressive in this video, it's because, well, I'm feeling pretty sour on the game. A lot of hard work went into this game. The developers themselves did a great job, and I'm very frustrated that the management and the organization of their timelines and production pipeline was so not prepared for what a live service game needs. Feel free to share the video around if you enjoyed or agreed with any bit of it, and I encourage you guys to add to my list in the comment section below. I'm going to share the video to some of my friends at 343. We're in for a rough few months unless 343 can quickly get the game turned around. I want the management to take a look at this video, consider the things I said, and start making the appropriate plans to get the game back on track. If Halo Infinite drags its feet and takes its time focusing on the wrong things, such as the monetization, instead of building up the actual social systems in the game, players are going to lose interest, and they're going to start drifting back to the other games that actually offer, well, value for their time. But that can change if some of the things that I said in this video are heeded. Now, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, subscribing, and I hope to see you guys on a more positive video in the future. I'll see you guys next time.